Is the Kansas City real estate market back on a win streak? Can we call it a win streak? In this video, we're breaking down 5 new trends that were set in the month of May, and we'll also unpack a generational tug of war that involves $60 trillion and a limited supply of homes across the country. Let's get started. Part number 1, 5 things that really stand out about today's Kansas City real estate market. So on your screen, you're seeing month-to-month changes. We've got data back from the month of May in, so let's go ahead and unpack it. The first is the average sales price. In May of 2023, we're at $366,000. This is up from a bottom in January 2023 of $311,000, a $50,000 increase just to buy a home in Kansas City. Number 2 is the percent of asking price received. This follows a similar trend. In January, we hit rock bottom at 96.2% of the asking price. And then in May of 2023, we're at 100.6%. Now, that's not just 100.6%. Keep in mind all of the homes in Kansas City that are overpriced, need significant repairs, that have been on the market forever, and are ultimately dragging down the average by quite a bit. In reality, it's going to cost a lot more than 100% of the ask or the list price in order to lock up one of these homes if you're in the market to buy a new home. And that's because there's just so much demand and not a lot of supply. Leads us to number 3, which is the amount of homes that sold in May is the highest that we've seen since September 2022. Seriously, May 2023, we've got 3,500 homes, just under that. And in September of 2022, we're looking at 3,515 homes that actually closed. There was a huge drought during that timeline, and it's mostly attributed to the high mortgage rates. Nobody wanted to buy or sell a home because nobody knew what was happening, but it appears that at the very least and temporarily, it seems like that's coming to an end. Now, as we move on to number 4, we're going to switch gears from the month to month, and instead we're going to take a look at year-to-year changes between May 2023 and May of 2022. So number 4 is that prices are up 6.7%, and this is despite all of the headlines fear-mongering about a real estate market crash, that home prices would start plummeting. It looks like that just has not materialized in Kansas City yet, and it remains a question of whether it will in the near future. However, it's important to note that while prices did increase over that year, that it wasn't due to an increase in value of real estate. It's mostly driven by artificial increases in prices, meaning there are so many people, there's so much demand for real estate, so little supply, that it's driving up the price, and that's kind of unsustainable in the long term. That's what contributes to a bubble, and that's why I'm leaving the door open to there being some trouble down the road. All remains to be seen. The story is still being told. Number 5, despite the amount of transactions in May being the highest we've seen since September in 2022, they're still down almost 20% this year. You can see the closed sales, 3495, down 17.5%. That does indicate that even though we're coming out of the slump that was driven by really high mortgage rates, that those mortgage rates had way more of an impact than the month-to-month data actually shows. Now, needless to say, all of the experts and headlines that forecasted that real estate market crash, that home prices would plummet, they were wrong. And while the jury's still out on whether that's a possibility in the future, their timelines, when they predicted this to happen, didn't materialize, at least in Kansas City. And the reason for that is because it didn't account for such high demand and low supply. That's what's causing these artificial increases in home prices. That's what's causing all of these bidding wars that are causing properties to go under contract way above the list price. And it ultimately raises the question of where is all of this demand coming from? According to this article from Fortune.com, baby boomers are pushing millennials out of the housing market. See, a lot of the demand across the country comes from baby boomers and millennials. Baby boomers are downsizing while millennials are just trying to get their first home. In other words, they're trying to buy their starter homes. And an important twist to this is that millennials are currently at their peak home buying years, most of them aged between 27 and 35, and they're ready to finally achieve that dream of home ownership. Well, Fortune.com says that the even bigger problem here is that the older generation holds 8 times the wealth as millennials, $73 trillion compared to just 9. And St. Louis Fed says that millennials own around 84 cents for every $1 owned by baby boomers at the exact same age. Now, they also go on to outline the 3 reasons why, if you're a millennial, that your parents' friends might just outbid you for your starter home. Number one is that they just have way more equity to actually leverage. They're holding about $5.5 trillion in real estate, whereas boomers are holding about $19 trillion. Number two is that baby boomers are living longer than previous generations. And while it's positive development, it also puts even more pressure on millennials given the massive housing shortage across the country, and that we're feeling acutely here in Kansas City. Number three is that in addition to having more cash on hand and more home equity, the baby boomers are also less sensitive to huge spikes in interest rates, which pushed a lot of millennials out of the market altogether. Now, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It does read that Bank of America expects millennials to largely remain on the sidelines because current inventory is too expensive, but they're optimistic that this trend won't last forever and that housing demand will rebound among young millennials in the years to come. Now, Bank of America is absolutely right that you should remain optimistic if you're a millennial. And the reason isn't just because the dynamics will shift and that you'll have a better opportunity once mortgage rates fall, but the big elephant in the room happens to be one of the largest transfers of wealth that we've ever seen in history. According to this article from Forbes, it reads that over the next 2 decades, the United States will experience an unprecedented shift of demographics and finances that will likely be felt by every American. Baby boomers are expected to transfer $30 trillion in wealth, and it's actually a lot more than that, to younger generations over the next many years. In no prior time in history of America has such a vast amount of wealth moved through the hands of generations. Now, that $30 trillion is just the tip of the iceberg. That's, if I had to compare it, that's about where our debt, our national debt, sits right now. Is really, according to this article from entrepreneur.com, is closer to $68 trillion. So ultimately, here's what I'm getting at. There's a limited supply of homes. A lot of demand is coming from baby boomers and millennials. Baby boomers have a lot more wealth, a lot more equity that they're able to leverage, but soon, and before you know it, an incomprehensible amount of money is about to change hands. And we know that millennials certainly want homes. There's very high demand for homes, and as cliche as the saying is, they're not making any more land. And we're certainly not building enough homes to match all of that demand. So this puts us in a position where no matter where the chess pieces are shuffled on the board, no matter where they end up, buying and owning real estate over long stretches of time, ideally 10 years or even more than that, you are inevitably going to come out on top. I mean, just look at this graph. Over a 10-year time period, home prices have never lost their value. They have only kept going up, and that seems to be true, especially when we look at all of this generational demand. So if right now you're looking at the home prices, you're looking at the news, and you see all of the negative signs, don't lose hope, because as long as you stay in that home, as long as you keep making those mortgage payments and you find a home that is comfortable every single month financially, you're going to be in a position to reap all of the benefits, and you'll avoid paying the higher prices down the road, because the same way that boomers are able to leverage their equity right now is the same thing that you'll be able to do in the next 10, 20, or 30 years. Now, if you have any questions about what you should look at, what happens when rates fall, how do I put myself in the best position to buy a home now or in the next year here in Kansas City, absolutely would love to help you. If you think we'd be a good fit personality-wise, not for everybody. I'm super analytical, and if that's what you're looking for, make sure to send me a message. We can set up a time to talk and put together a plan of action so that no matter where the pieces on the chessboard end up, that you're set up in the position to win. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already for future market updates, and I'll see you on the next one.